So what I actually want to talk to you about today is iteration, yes, but I also want to talk to you about failure and the moment of failure and how that can actually be a transformational moment for you to actually embrace the growth mindset. So where I want to start is actually sharing with you a little bit of my background. So what you see here is I'm Amanda Silver. I'm the CVP of product for the developer division at Microsoft. And so we work on all of the products that focus on developers as our customers. Up there at the top there, that's me at about 3 years old. And my dad actually started to teach me STEM and math and encourage me to pursue science and technology when I was about that age. He would say to me, you have 3 apples. A gorilla comes along and takes 2 of your apples. How many apples do you have left? And so when I could barely speak, my dad was already trying to teach me math, support my interest in math, science, and technology and engineering. And all 3 of us in that picture, my 2 older brothers and myself, ended up pursuing technology thanks to my dad, who is a theoretical physicist and was trying to, encourage us to do this. We're a really odd family. When we got a little bit older and we wanted our dinner guests to leave, we would earnestly begin quizzing our dad to learn more about string theory and dimensions. And he couldn't resist the bait, and our guests had better things to do with their time, so they would inevitably leave. But we'd get back to those math quizzes. And he'd quiz me, and sometimes I'd get the answer right, and sometimes I'd get it wrong. But when I got it wrong, we'd actually work together to analyze my approach so that I could understand why I wasn't landing on the right answer. And this actually made me comfortable in that moment in knowing that if I didn't get it right that first time, I could actually learn from my mistakes and I would get better at answering it over time. So fast forward a little bit. Years later, that's me. In my first few years at Microsoft, I came straight out of college. A couple of years later, I was speaking at conferences, and even a few years later, I might have spoken in Second Life, which was kind of a virtual reality environment. Maybe a little bit misguided, but hey, it's all about new experiences. But what I love about these pictures is you can actually look at the hardware in the picture, and you can see kind of what was the era that I was actually working in technology. And so that's what I really love about it. The monitor size is a really good indication of what year it was. Over the years, I had many, many technical contributions and actually led to a bunch of different patents and even years later, talking about open source and kind of the shift that Microsoft has made over the past few years to become more of a contributor to open source, which is extremely meaningful for the developer audience, which is the primary audience that I serve. Fast forward even a couple of years after that, and I just want to share with you definitely one of my career highlights. This is Satya talking about our work at one of our conferences.
I want to move up from infrastructure and trust to the next layer, developers. Now, this is obviously very close and near and dear to everyone at Microsoft because this is how we as a company got started building developer tools. But one of the most interesting things that's happening out there is today when you look at the software engineering jobs, 61% of the openings are outside of what is considered the tech industry. In fact, the crossover, the tipping point was 2017. And therefore, our mission that we got started in 1975 is even more important. That is to build the best tool chain, the most complete tool chain for developers. With Visual Studio Code, we have the best IDEs out there. We're doing language innovation like TypeScript. We have Azure DevOps to help you with all of your build and deployment needs. And of course, GitHub is the home for 40+ million open source developers in collaboration in communities. And sort of really bringing all of that is what our goal is. In fact, the use cases, some of the sort of innovations that you will see, I'm really thrilled about. The first one is Visual Studio Online. I mean, you should check this out. Even just last night, I was going and playing with it. I signed up for it. it's a game changer for anyone who struggles on weekends to create your own dev environments. This is a godsend because you now can go to Visual Studio Online. You can get your entire environment provisioned for you with all its dependencies right there, just on a browser on any machine. And another one is IntelliCode. We are using AI, learning from all of the open source code out there on GitHub, and then bringing that intelligence to your editor. As you type your code, it's doing all of the completion so that you can build on the shoulders of giants. And that's a way to drive productivity. Another one is LiveShare. Now, just imagine what it can do for a young developer who joins a team, wants to have some code review or goes consult with a mentor. LiveShare changes the dynamics because no development project is a solo sport. It's always a team sport. So really bringing that next level of innovation with GitHub and LiveShare changes the dynamics and culture of organizations.
So I love that because it definitely highlights a lot of the innovation that we've brought to the space that my team is really trying to serve. Now, some of that was a couple of years ago, and some of the product names have changed. You know, Visual Studio Online that he was speaking about is now called GitHub Codespaces. But you guys can actually go and start your projects really quickly using some of this functionality, and you can even collaborate across the world with your teammates using Visual Studio LiveShare as an example. But I now want to back up real quick, a little bit earlier in my career.
I want to move.
Fail. So let's go back. I had incredible support from my dad through my study of STEM and through kind of learning science and technology and pursuing that in high school and even into college. And then my second semester of college, I was taking the midterm for discrete math, and I failed. I mean, I didn't really fail. I got a C, but to my standards, that was failing. And I got called into the professor's office. And the professor had what he thought was a very serious chat with me. He said, "Look, do you enjoy your computer science classes?" And I was, "Yeah, I really do." And he was like, "Well, if you weren't majoring in computer science, what do you think you would want to do?" And at the time, I was taking a history of photography course. It was really fascinating. And so I said, art history. He said, "Well, maybe you should consider that." So I had an option in that moment. I could take his advice and essentially quit what I was pursuing, or I could continue to persist and try to take that as an opportunity to learn what I could do to get better. And I'm sure that it's based on the support from my dad that actually encouraged me to recognize that even in a case where I get the answer wrong, that I can persist and I can get better and I can learn how to do better. And so in that moment, I actually decided, you know what? I don't need to take advice from this guy. I'm actually going to go and become a TA for that class next year. I'm going to become a TA for the classes that have that class as a prerequisite. And what happened was I ended up spending the next 3 years of college being a TA, a teaching assistant, and helping more and more students to pursue their aspiration to learn computer science and to contribute to creating with technology throughout my next 3 years. And it led to me eventually coming to Microsoft, where I could help millions of developers contribute using and create using technology. And so I think one of the most important things to recognize is that in that moment of failure, you can actually transform that. And you can think about that as a learning opportunity. And so I'm really proud of a lot of the work that we've done recently to bring some curriculum to everyone around how to build tech resilience. And you can check it out on the Microsoft Learn docs, things about growth mindset and self-efficacy and cognitive flexibility. And so I want to share with you one example video that we've developed with this tech resilience that really gets to the nugget of this cognitive flexibility and the idea that you can persist in the face of challenge.
It is probably safe to say that most of us in tech have tried an approach to solving a problem before, only to have it fail entirely. In such moments, not wanting to give up, we ask ourselves, where do I go from here? And at this point, as we try to adapt and pivot, we are using something called cognitive flexibility. The word cognitive comes from a Latin verb that means getting to know or knowledge. So cognitive flexibility refers to the ability to learn or use knowledge in ways that reflects being adaptive and open to change. When faced with an unexpected setback, someone without much cognitive flexibility, not adapting to the situation, might attempt to do the same thing again and again and keep failing, which can make it difficult to persist. On the other hand, by thinking about the situation differently and generating multiple solutions, someone who has more cognitive flexibility will be open to new ideas and stretching their problem-solving approach to adapt. It can be hard to anticipate every outcome, and research shows the ability to adapt is a core piece of creative problem-solving. When faced with a roadblock, we can pause and remind ourselves that we have overcome all kinds of challenges before, and we absolutely can again. And how can we better stretch ourselves to adapt? We can do this strategically by being open to new ideas, seeing different perspectives, and coming up with multiple solutions. We can ask ourselves to be open to trying something new, even if it means changing our original plan completely. Viewing the situation in new ways by perspective taking will help us create different solutions. Seeking different vantage points might mean moving out and around instead of focusing and narrowing the problem further. Or it might mean taking a closer look at an earlier choice and even abandoning our current path for a different approach altogether. This can be hard, but remember that you can always get help from others. A fresh pair of eyes can provide us with another perspective and solution. So when we face an unexpected setback and need to pivot, collaboration becomes especially valuable and can set the stage for improving your cognitive flexibility. A team with a diverse set of backgrounds and experiences is better positioned to see the situation from many perspectives and can come up with a variety of solutions. But if your team misses out on those perspectives, it's harder to innovate new solutions. So the next time you hit an unexpected setback and wonder, where do I go from here? Remember that you can exercise your cognitive flexibility, you can stretch and adapt. This week, when you encounter an unforeseen challenge, pause and remind yourself that you can approach it strategically if you stay open and confident. And always be open to new possibilities to generate solutions. Have you ever received
All right.
feedback?
So Travis talked a little bit about the customer-driven playbook, which is really kind of core to the process that our team uses to iterate on the product creation. And so a lot of what you saw Satya talking about a little bit earlier is based on this methodology. We actually started by talking to customers, reaching out to them, and understanding the problems that they were facing, developing the concepts and the features that we thought would solve their challenges. And we did it in such a way by bringing together many diverse ideas so that we could actually, collectively come up with these concepts that could solve these challenges for the customers. But it's also really important to include the customers in this conversation as we do this product development and ideation. I think the other thing that's really important in this is to recognize that this is actually a framework to pivot the way that we think about obstacles. And so Travis talked a lot in the last talk about the idea of a hypothesis. And the hypothesis is something that, using the term hypothesis, gives you the safety to recognize that the idea that you've come up with may or may not pan out. but it gives you the opportunity to actually learn in that moment, that you could pivot from the learning opportunity, that if the hypothesis that you had doesn't pan out, you can pivot and you can actually continue to persist. I think another important dimension of this is that during the concept development and the feature development phase, that you actually want to develop multiple concepts and multiple potential solutions before you start to pick up the shovel and persist on one of the concepts or features that you've developed. Now, we talk about this in terms of hacking our culture. We've changed our culture dramatically over the past 5-10 years at Microsoft. But I think this is also a mental shift inside each one of us. We need to change the way that we talk to ourselves about that moment of failure. And we need to see it as an opportunity to forge ahead. We need to change. We need to give ourselves a framework that allows us to safely explore things that might not pan out. And so that's kind of how we think about the hypothesis progression framework. We need to change the action. Rather than just coming up with an idea that we're going to pursue, we actually want to come up with multiple ideas that we're going to pursue and test. And we want to change the values. We want to make sure that it's not the technology for technology's sake that we're pursuing, but that we're actually trying to build a solution for someone, and that we're testing that and validating that solution actually works for that person. Over a period, we had 10,000 direct customer interactions with our team. And the important reason why we prioritize those direct customer interactions between our team and the developers that we hope to serve with our tools, is that every one of these customer interactions is actually an opportunity to learn and to pivot and to get better as a team. And in fact, there's an industry term for this called developer velocity. Now, every company really wants to improve their time to value, meaning how long does it take for their product to reach the hands of their customers that they aim to serve and provide that value to them. This is often done with small increments. It can be really tiny things that actually yield large impact, as long as the signal from the target customers is really good. But it's also really important to kind of think about, what is the cost of pursuing any idea? Oftentimes you might hear this referred to as the return on investment. If this pans out, how much do I have to invest to get the return that I would see? What we want to do is to identify what are those high impact, low cost things for us to invest in, or to spend time and energy on. And I think the last thing to kind of recognize is that if companies and organizations and projects and even, student hackathon teams improve their iteration time, they improve the time that it takes for them to invest in an idea and to get signal from their target customer, whether that's something to pursue or not, that actually leads to a better bullseye in terms of the product market fit, as we call it. In other words, a better chance that the product that they're developing is actually going to serve the customers that they're aiming to serve. When we think about the actual market performance of these companies that have fast developer velocity, that have improved their developer velocity, they tend to have 4 to 5 times higher revenue, and they have 55% higher innovation. And so whether it's you starting to practice this with your Imagine Cup project this year, or it's you thinking about what it's going to look like as you become an entrepreneur, or as you enter the industry and you lead a product team or you lead an engineering team, getting to the point where you have these small iterations and that you practice making it safe to fail, to get something wrong, to learn and to pivot and move forward, that is going to be an essential lifelong skill. So I just want to thank you for joining us today. I'm happy to take any questions, and let me know.